What's up guys, it's Ash here and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, we've got some custom tactics and player instructions for one of the best direct formations in FIFA 23, the 4-2-2. But just before we get started, as always, I'd appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up. It's team of the season, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a nice 5% discount. Okay guys, so starting off with the custom tactics for the defensive style, as always, you guessed it, we have this on balance. This is because it gives us the greatest control over our defenders, where when we need to press, we're able to press, but then when we want to drop off and be a little bit more passive, we're also able to do so. So having this on balance does give us greater control, which the other settings do not give us. Moving on to the defensive width, I'm kind of enjoying having this on 35 at the moment. The reason I've lowered it since the last time is because I was noticing too many gaps in between my defensive line and I wanted to fix it. So we've kind of like narrowed down the defense even more to 35, so there's less areas for our opponents to pass right through the middle. This does make us a little bit more exposed down the wing at times, but I feel like the sacrifice was worth it. That being said, if you want to up the width because it's too low for you, that is also fine. Now moving on to the depth guys, I've actually got this on 65 at the moment. This is kind of because of my rewards and stuff like that, but ever since I've got like Kunde and Saliba, I've been able to use a higher depth because I'm able to cover more ground quickly when an opponent tries to like through ball us. So I'm able to recover the space and recover possession because my players are just a lot faster and better as a whole. So I'm able to use 65 depth as I'm able to win the ball higher up the pitch, and I'm also able to recover if we do get through ball. So it is really nice, but if your defenders are a little bit slower, you can lower your depth. That is also fine. Moving on to build-up play guys, I'm actually really enjoying fast build-up recently. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because the gameplay seems different, but I've been really enjoying fast build-up because I feel like I'm getting better movement out of my players in the build-up, and I'm able to just play it a lot quicker and a lot more fluid. It's just really suiting my style at the moment. That being said, I would say balance is probably still the most meta and consistent way to build up, but honestly fast build-up's been really nice for me. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I suggest using direct passing. This is because it is the most meta option in the game. Basically your attacking players will like bunch up against the defenders, so you can do like the really overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players also seem to make like extra movements in the box, so you can get off that extra pass to guarantee the goals and minimize the RNG of like a goalkeeper saving a shot, for example. Now moving on to the attacking width, this isn't really a specific number, but I've just got this on 43 at the moment. This is because I don't like having my width too narrow to the point where it feels like my players are sat on top of each other, and I also don't like having my width too high, otherwise this formation feels a bit like a 4-2-4, and if I wanted to use that, I'd obviously just use it. So I'm kind of just going for something like 43 as I feel like it's just a bit more balanced for me. Moving on to players in box, I have this on 6. This is so we can get some players into the box to create those chances, but we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we get counter-attacked. As for corners and free kicks, I have these both on 1 because there is a corner kick routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. Link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the two striker positions I suggest going for a balance between the two. What I like to do is go for a more creative player on the left and then a more poacher finisher style player on the right. You can obviously switch them around if you want, like have the creative player on the right, but it's just because like Havertz is left footed. But the reason I suggest this is because you get a lot more out your front line this way. You're way less restricted and you don't just have to lump through balls over the top all the time, because if you're using players like Haaland and Kane, they're very restricted because they don't have like super good dribbling ability and stuff like that. They're very one-dimensional. You always have to play like through balls and crosses. So if you have a more creative player in your strike force, you're able to switch up the play a lot more and be more varied. Now moving on to the right cam and the left cam, I suggest using like really good winger style players. This is because they're like, these players are like your main outlets in the team, like they will cover the wider areas, so it is important that they have like the pace to do so. But I suggest good winger style players. These are players with like really good pace, good dribbling, good skill moves, good crossing and shooting of course. You're not going to want to use like slow clunky players that have no creative ability, otherwise you might struggle in these two positions. But yeah, just make sure your cams are like really good, otherwise you might struggle. Now moving on to the left CDM, I like to go for a more defensive minded player. This is somebody that's going to stay back, break up the play, and make sure we're good defensively. So I do suggest somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in defense and they're not too bothered about going forward. As for the right CDM, I like to go for a more box to box style player. This is somebody that's going to attack and defend and have a bit of a free roll in the team. So I suggest somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in both attack and defense, but just ensure that this player is nice and well rounded so they can do a bit of everything. Now moving on to the left back, I like to go for a more attacking minded fullback. This is somebody that's actually going to get forward and contribute for us on the attack. And then in the right back position, I like to go for a more defensively sound person that is just going to stay back and add defensive support. That's just like a balance I like to do between the fullbacks. You guys don't have to if you don't want. As for the centre backs, these need to be the meta players, the fast players, the medium high work rates, the ones with the good animations, the ones with a good physicality. You know the types of defenders that are good in this game. The keeper really doesn't matter. That is just down to preference because they're all garbage. Now moving on to the player instructions, guys. On the strikers, I like to have them on stay central and mixed attack. We have them on stay central because we don't want these players drifting out wide. They are our strikers, so it is important that they stay in the central areas as they're always where we need them to be that way. We don't need them covering the wide areas as we've already got the cams to kind of do that. We also have them on mixed attack because I feel like you get a lot more out of the players. They seem to have a lot more movement. They seem to be a lot more dynamic in their approach and varied. If you have them on getting behind, they just make the same one-dimensional runs all the time and they don't really do a lot, and it makes you become predictable. So mixed attack makes these players get a lot more involved in the build-up and they just seem to do a lot more as a result. Moving on to the right cam and the left cam, we have them on comeback on defense and get into the box for cross. We have them on comeback on defense, so it ensures that we will defend in a 4-4-2 shape. This is because the 4-4-2 is one of the best defensive shape formations in the game. The reason for this is we have really good coverage of the narrow areas and the wide areas because of the 4 defenders and the 4 midfielders. So it's just to ensure that they're always in the correct position. We don't want it defending like a 4-2-4 because these players are lazy. So comeback on defense, super important in my opinion. And then we also have them on get into the box across, so they're not hesitant to commit into the penalty area to get more involved with our attacks. If you have them on balanced crossing runs, sometimes they can be a little bit static and not do too much. Now moving on to the left CDM, the more defensive minded player, we have him on stay back while attacking, cut passing lanes and cover centre. We have him on stay back because that's pretty self-explanatory. We don't want him going forward if he's defensive. We have him on cut passing lanes, so he's always looking to break up the play and annoy our opponents. Works really well, this setting. And then we also have him on cover centre, so he does cover those central areas. Moving on to the right CDM, where we have a more box to box style player, we have him on default settings and cover centre. The default settings are because they do have a bit of a free roll, so we don't want to restrict them all that much. We kind of just let him do his own thing. And then we have him on cover centre, so he does cover the central areas when he is defending. Now moving on to the left back, my more attacking minded fullback, we have him on balanced attack and overlap. The reason we do this is because the 4-2-2, although it's one of the wider narrow formations, still technically a narrow formation. So sometimes we want to have a wider option as well as the narrow options. So by putting one of the fullbacks on balanced attack and overlap, it's going to give you a wider option when you're going forward. It just makes you a lot less unpredictable, and it's very difficult for your opponent to defend it because they can't cover narrow areas and the wide areas at the same time. Moving on to the right back, my more defensive fullback, I have him on stay back and overlap. We have him on stay back, so we always have at least 3 defenders back, and we have him on the overlap run type. So when we do trigger him on a run forward, he'll make the overlapping runs to add extra width. As for the centre backs and the keeper, I leave them on default settings, but I do see some people say you want to put them on comes for crosses and sweep keeper. I personally just don't think it makes a difference, so I just kind of leave it alone. But yeah, they are my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-2. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a thumbs up, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace out, guys. Love ya.